Upanishads Introduction Part 3. The Upanishadic doctrine of the self and some systems of Indian philosophy. Part 4. Advaita Vedanta. Acharya Shankara has developed Advaita Vada from the Upanishadic doctrine of Atman. Numerous passages of the Upanishads can be cited to claim support of Shankara's view of Advaita. We have already cited passages from Upanishads to support the doctrine of one supreme self in previous chapters. From death to death does he go, say the Upanishads, who sees difference in this world. Just as by the knowledge of a bump of earth, everything that is made of earth comes to be known. All this being merely a world, a modification and a name, the ultimate substratum of it all being the earth. That just as by the knowledge of a piece of iron, everything made of iron becomes known. Similarly, by the knowledge of Brahman, everything is known, because Brahman is the ultimate substratum of all. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.6. Aruni says in the beginning, my dear, this universe was being alone, one only without a second. Being alone that existed in the beginning, one only without a second. Yajnavalkya says, it is only when there seems to be a duality that one thinks about the other, but where the Atman alone is, what and where by may one think? According to Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is the ultimate reality. In ultimate sense, Brahman is devoid of all qualities. It is indeterminate and non-dual. It is nirvishesha and transcendent. Brahman is pure consciousness. Brahman associated with Maya appears as qualified or Saguna or Ishvara, who is the creator, preserver and destroyer of this universe. Brahman is the ground of the world, which appears through Maya. According to Shankara, Brahman is the efficient and as well as the material cause of the universe through Maya. There is no causality in Brahman without Maya. The world is an appearance, but from the phenomenal point of view, the world is quite real. It is practical reality so long as true knowledge does not dawn. According to Advaita view, the self is pure consciousness and pure being. Jivatma, according to Advaita view, the self is pure consciousness and pure being. Jivatva is an appearance. It is phenomenal reality from the phenomenal point of view. Jivas are many, but actually the plurality of the soul is an imposition. Pure self is only one. Therefore, the Upanishad says, Tattvamasi, the self is identified with Brahman. In true sense, Brahman is an absolute. Therefore, it is said that Brahman is everything and everything is Brahman. Shankara criticizes Brahma Parinamavada. The world is Vivarta of Brahman. Appearance is Vivarta. Shankara does not declare the world to be an illusion. According to him, the world is not an illusion. It is Mithya. Mithya means the world is neither real nor unreal, but Mithya. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.6. It appears to be real. The passages of the Upanishads mostly support Advaita view of Shankara. Shankara does not say that the world and Jivatva are mere dream. He says that there is a great difference between Swapna and Jagrat. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.6. To explain the worldly creation according to Advaita view, the Advaitavadins introduce the concept of Vivarta. In all the creations we find in the world, the effect is produced through a transformation of the cause into something else. The cause dies in order to give birth to the effect. In any case, in order to account for the emergence of the effect, some form of alteration in the cause has somehow to be admitted. The Vivartavada makes a bold attempt in this line. It tries to show that even in this there are illustrations of an effect being produced without any change or modification whatsoever is the cause. The rope, snake, etc. are the classic examples. The examples have been taken in the wrong way everywhere and their true significance has been missed. It is assumed that by these examples the Vedanta has sought to explain away the world as mere illusion, whereas the examples have quite another bearing. They only seek to show the unsullied nature of the cause, which is not touched in any way by the effect imposed upon it. As Shankara says, not by the fact that a water snake is taken to be a snake does it become full of poison, nor a snake being taken for a water snake becomes poisonless. Similarly, all the imperfections and limitations in creation do not touch Brahman at all. The Vivartavada keeps the whole cause unmodified and yet explains the modification. The Vedanta cites the classic examples of illusion because on the intellectual plan there is no other analogy through which the unmodified nature of the cause along with the production of the effect can be illustrated. So, Shankara preserves the real spirit of the self doctrine of the Upanishads when he develops his non-dualistic philosophy from them. Controversy between Advaita and Vishistadvaita. The question at issue between the advocates of Advaita on the one hand and Vishistadvaita on the other resolves itself into the problem whether nature is apparent or real, whether finite objects in time and space do really exist or only seem to exist. The controversy is not to be found in the Upanishads in an explicit form. It has grown in times much later than those when these treatises were composed and out of attempts to expound certain utterances contained in them one way or the other. After devoting a good deal of attention to the study of the question, we have come to the conclusion that the controversy is little more than war of words. There is, it seems to us, an unsectarian Vedantism which neither the one nor the other school truly represents, and the truth of which both in their different ways testify to the fact is there is not a single truth which one of them accepts and the other rejects, and not a single false doctrine which the one does not abjure equally with the other. But in doing the one of the other in their acceptances and rejections, they use quite different terms and phrases, so that what the one seems to assert, the other seems to deny, and vice versa. What we have said will become clear as we proceed. The controversy arises out of the relativity of subject and object, both in its individual and universal aspects. We have seen how the phenomena of the mind are related to it. They are relative to it, dependent on it. They are many, while it is one. They are ever changing, impermanent, while it is unchangeable and permanent. In times of dreamless sleep, they are all but not existent. They exist only in a potential form, unified with the causal power of the mind. The question we have now to ask is, are the phenomena apparent or real? That they have some sort of existence, they are not absolutely unreal, admits of no question. The question is as to the nature of their existence. That they are relative to the mind, dependent on the mind, is also clear to reflection, if not to ordinary common sense. That color has no existence independent of a seeing mind, and that sound can exist only in relation to the power of hearing, may be unintelligible to unreflective people, but cannot admit of moment's doubt to a philosopher. Independent and absolute existence, therefore, can in no case be attributed to phenomena. You may choose to call them real, but you must remember that in this case you use the word reality not in the sense of absolute existence but in a different sense, in the sense of relative or dependent existence. But the mind is real in the former sense. It is absolutely real, its existence not depending upon anything else. So, phenomena are not real in the same sense in which the mind is real, and we may even say that they are not real in the same degree in which the mind is real. If then by reality one understood only absolute reality, one might say that if the mind is real, phenomena are unreal, that as they are nothing but the mind, all that needs to be said about them is already said in the proposition. The mind is real, and they do not deserve to be affirmed in a coordinate proposition. Looked at in this way, therefore, phenomena are not real, but only apparent. Even when they seem to be most real in our waking hours, their existence is only relative, dependent not for themselves but for another, apparent, therefore, and not real. Looked at again from another standpoint, from the standpoint of their changefulness, their transitoriness, phenomena will appear to lose a large part of the reality ascribed to them by common sense. What is red now becomes white the next moment. What is hard may be made soft with no great difficulty. What is human body now, with every beauty of form, color, and proportion, will be reduced to ashes in the course of few hours. Do such fitful, evanescent things deserve to be called real? Are they not appearances rather than realities? Again, in the hours of dreamless sleep, phenomena seem to lose even that relative apparent existence that they possess in our waking hours. It cannot indeed be said that they become absolutely non existent in those hours. Were it so, they would not restart into their relative existence and be recognized in their identity in waking hours. But it is evident that their mode of existence in the former condition is very different from their existence in the latter. In the former, their existence is only potential, causal, and not actual, and their difference is only implicit, not explicit. Now, how can things that can thus cease to exist for all practical purposes be said to be real? They are only apparent. Phenomenal or apparent existence, seeming to exist, is the only sort of existence that can be attributed to them. Now it will be seen that the facts remaining exactly the same, a very different description may be given of them, and a very different phraseology used with reference to them if one chooses to do so. It may be said, for instance, that though the phenomena of the mind are not independent of it, they are, in a sense, distinguished from it, distinguished as modes or modifications from the thing modified. The thing modified and its modifications are indeed related, but they are not absolutely the same. Phenomena are many and different, whereas the mind is one. As modifications, then, phenomena, with their plurality and difference, are as real as the mind, the thing modified. Hence, their existence is not merely apparent, it is real. Secondly, as to their transitoriness, their changefulness, it must be observed that though they change in form, their substance remains unexhausted. This substance is indeed nothing but the power of the mind to produce phenomena, to assume various forms, but this power itself is something real and not apparent. It is also as the power of modifying itself in various ways, something distinguishable from the permanent, unchangeable aspect of the mind, that aspect in which it is the seat of eternal ideas. Both these aspects of them, as distinct from each other, are equally real and non-apparent. In the third place, the state of dreamless sleep, though a state in which phenomena and their differences remain unmanifested, is by no means a state of indifference or perfect homogeneity. Though unmanifested, the objects are there with all their differences. In fact, otherwise they could not be reproduced in waking life in all their variety and fullness. In this case also, then, there is no room for saying that identity only is real and difference only apparent. Reality has to be affirmed of both identity and difference. We have only to universalize our case, and we are face to face with the problem in hand. Put God in the place of the mind and the objects of nature in that of the phenomena of the mind, and we understand the point at issue between the Vivartavada, and the Parinamavada. Nature is relative to God, dependent on Him. It is only a mode assumed by Him. It is constantly changing. It is in a perpetual flux, and then a time comes at the end of every cycle when it loses all its wonderful complexity and is reduced to a causal form in which the germs of variety are only potential. And even in this causal form, it is nothing but the power of God to project a variety of appearances in time and space, and not an independent reality. What should we say of such a thing? Is its existence apparent or real? We may choose one or the other form of expression according as we look at the facts from one or another standpoint. The facts themselves will remain all the same. Emphasizing the relative and dependent character of nature, we may say that as it has no absolute existence, it does not deserve to be called real. It is only apparent. Again, directing our attention particularly to the fact that nature, as relative and independent as phenomenal, is by these very characteristics distinct from God, the Supreme Reality. We may say that as thus distinguished, it has a reality as much as the Supreme Reality. Again, as to the homogeneity to which nature is reduced at the end of one and the beginning of another period of creation, we may bring into prominence the fact that the homogeneity is more apparent than real. To the supreme intellect, to which the past and the future are as real as the present, the infinite complexity of nature is present, even in its potential condition. To him, therefore, if not to finite intelligence, nature is as real in its potentiality as in its actuality. The repugnance of the Advaitin to admitting the reality of nature is due to his firm faith in the absolute attributes of God, in his infinitude, eternality, and unchangeableness, absolute intelligence, and indivisibility. He thinks that the admission of the reality of nature amounts to a denial of these attributes. If finite things really exist, do not they form so many limitations of the infinite, which in that ceases to be infinite? Secondly, as the eternal is neither born nor dies, and as he is infinite, one only without a second, where is the room for other things coming into and going out of real existence? Again, to say that change is real is to say that the absolute reality changes, that it becomes what it was not before, which means that it is subject to the law of causation and is therefore no absolute at all. Further, if to the supreme intellect everything is equally present, what possible meaning can be attached to things past and future? Then, as to finite intelligence subject to error and ignorance, where is the room for such a thing in the midst of infinite knowledge? To say, as the Parinama Vadin says, that God assumes the form of the world, that he himself becomes the various objects of the world, animate and inanimate, is to say that the infinite one divests himself of his infinitude, cases to be infinite, a doctrine which is absurd on the face of it, and which makes all spiritual exercises, all efforts to attain unity with the infinite, utterly unmeaning. The Vivartavadin therefore concludes that objects in time and space, including finite intelligence, or to speak more correctly, all things that make intelligence appear limited, are only appearances and not realities, and the power by which God projects these appearances is like that by which a magician performs his wonderful feats. It is a most mysterious power, its nature transcending human comprehension. It is, on the one hand, one with God. It is his power and nothing apart from him. On the other hand, as something manifesting itself in innumerable finite objects in a series of innumerable changes without beginning and end, it is something distinguishable from the divine essence, into which no notion of finitude, mutability, and divisibility enters. The mysteriousness of this power further consists in its apparently making things come to pass which are contradictory and therefore impossible. By this power, he who is one and infinite seems to make himself many and finite. He who is unchangeable seems to change himself perpetually. He who is absolute knowledge and holiness seems to make himself ignorant and unholy. Hence, our philosophers call this power Maya. It is most expressive term indicating the incrustableness of a power whose nature can no more be understood than its existence denied. The Advaitin do not claim that the postulation of this incomprehensible power affords any real explanation of the enigmas of the world. They candidly admit the final incomprehensibility of things, the mysteriousness of creation, and gives this mystery a name, Maya or Avidya. This term Avidya, when spoken of as the cause of the world, does not exactly mean ignorance, but rather not knowledge. That is, something seemingly different from knowledge, which constitutes the essence of divinity. Now, God, as contemplated in Himself in His infinite and immutable essence, apart from Maya, is the Nirguna Brahman, of whom or which nothing more can be said than that it is truth, intelligence, and bliss. Sat Chit Anandam, as contemplated with reference of Maya, as producing the world of finite objects by this mysterious power, God is Ishvara, the ruler, the Lord, what Western theologians call the personal God, the omniscient and omnipotent creator, preserver and destroyer of the world, the father, guide, instructor, and savior of finite souls. The Advaitin do not say that these attributes of God, attributes which are called personal, are not true. What they say is that they are relatively true. That is, with reference to that mysterious power by which God seems to produce things different from Him. These attributes imply a certain difference, a duality between God and the world. And duality is the result of Maya, as Maya is without beginning and without end, being the power of the eternal being. The Saguna character of God is also eternal. He is eternally Ishvara, Lord, as well as Brahman. As we said, the controversy is little more than a war of words. Nothing is contended, nothing is contended for on one side which is not admitted in some shape or other by the opposite side. An infinite being, which is the final explanation and ultimate reality of all existence, a creative power out of which all things come, a start of potential existence in which all differences are unmanifested, the causal and mundane aspects of the deity, finite souls distinct from infinite and seeking union with the latter, all these appear in both the contending systems. The difference is not so much of doctrine, if a difference of phraseology is not taken as such, as of emphasis. Though the same things are recognized in both the systems, they do not put the same emphasis on all things. The Advaita emphasize the relativity and evanescence of finite things. The Parinamavadin ask us not to forget the relative and changeful. These things are manifestations of a real divine power. The Advaitin draws attention to the unity and identity of God amid the apparent difference of natural objects. The Parinamavadin points out that difference is not opposed to identity and is as real as the latter. The one gives prominence to the truth that the divine essence is untouched by the imperfections of the world. The other adds that things, with all their imperfections, are nevertheless full of the divine presence. The former insists upon our constantly keeping in view the ultimate unity of God and man, a unity which alone makes salvation attainable. The latter tells us not to lose sight of out difference with the infinite, a difference which alone gives a meaning to our search after salvation. We need not dwell upon the point. This difference of emphasis pervades the two systems and constitutes their main distinction. We have confined ourselves to the exposition of the philosophical aspect of the question and have not touched its scriptural aspect. A good deal of energy is spent on either side in interpreting scriptural texts, in trying to find out, for instance, whether the admission of duality or difference in a passage is final or only tentative, made merely for the purpose of enjoining a preliminary spiritual discipline, or as an expression of final truth, whether again an ascertain of unity does or does not exclude a real diversity of modes, and thirdly, to what extent and in what respects an illustration drawn from natural objects or from the practical life of man to explain the relation of God to the world is to be accepted as a representation of ultimate truth, and so on. However important from one point of view such discussions may be, we have purposely refrained from entering into them, and have tried only to set forth in brief the appeals that two theories make to reason as distinct from faith in the scriptures. An elaborate discussion of the question in its scriptural aspects, with occasional resorts to independent reasoning, will be found in Shankara's commentary on the 14th aphorism, Pada 1, chapter 2 of the Shariraka Mimamsa. Important statements on the points at issue between the two schools will be found in the commentary on some of the other aphorisms of the same Pada. Central teaching of the Upanishads. Still a question may arise. What is the real and central teaching of the Upanishads? The Ishopanishad answers. Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam. Everything is inhabited by Isha or Brahman. Nehananasti Kinchan. There is no plurality at all. Paul Deucin describes in the conception of unity as it is expressed in the words of Rick 1.164. Ekam sad vipra bahudha vadanti. The poets give many names to that which is one only. The fundamental thought of the whole teaching of the Upanishads lay already hidden gem. For this verse, strictly understood, really asserts the all plurality, consequently all proximity in space, all succession in time, all relation of cause and effect, all interdependence of subject and object rests only upon words. Vadanti, or as was said later, is a mere matter of words. Vacharan bhana, and that only unity is in the full sense real. The central teaching of the Upanishads is that the Atman is the sole reality, that there can be nothing beside it, and therefore with the knowledge of the Atman all is known. From this point of view, there is no universe outside of the Atman, but the loftiness of this metaphysical conception forbade its maintenance in the presence of the empirical consciousness which teaches the existence of a real universe. It was necessary to concede the reality of the universe and to reconcile with this the idealistic dogma of the sole reality of the Atman by asserting that the universe exists but is in truth nothing but the Atman. The Upanishadic view that Brahman is the sole reality does not mean that there are things outside Brahman which are illusory. There is no such thing as unreal. Everything is real, since all are moments in the all-comprehensive reality of Brahman. Nothing can exist outside of Brahman. Everything is within the all-comprehensive self or Brahman. The Neti Neti of Yagyavalkya also simply signifies the distinction of the Atman from all this that is here and does not convey any sense of the excluding everything from it, as is ordinarily supposed. The Brahman of the Upanishads has no opposition whatsoever to anything and as such need to exclude anything in order to maintain its reality or purity. Thus, Neti Neti does not deny the reality of existence. It denies all the empirical characterization of reality. It just signifies that reality is something unique and distinct from the empirical. According to R.E. Hume, the Atman theory and the Brahman theory became merged together in an absolute pantheism in the Upanishads. He calls it intelligent monism. Intelligent monism, it may in general be called, for although very different types of philosophy have been shown to be represented in the Upanishads, monism is their most prevalent type and the one which has continued their chief heritage. Still, even as monism, it is hardly the monism of the West, nor is it the monism that is based upon science. The fundamental thought that runs through the whole body of the Upanishads is the sole reality of Brahman or Atman. Even when the reality of the universe is conceded, the purpose is to maintain that the manifold world is not different from Brahman, though Brahman is immanent. It is at the same time remained transcendent. It is inside all this and outside all this. The Rig Veda states that Brahman covers the whole universe and yet transcends it by the measure of 10 figures. The Upanishads declare other than the known and more than the unknown is that. Om Tat Sat.